What's up, you guys? I'm Ross Sapp. This is Fightful Studios. Chris Jericho has been a big topic of conversation lately, and that is after months of being off of AEW TV. A lot of questions as to what Chris Jericho will do if his contract is up at the end of the year. I say if because we don't know the specifics as to whether or not time off can lead to his deal getting frozen, whatever that may be. It's even caused some confusion within WWE. But I don't think he's done in wrestling, and I don't think he should be. Now, I know a lot of people that are watching this are done with Chris Jericho. They feel like they've seen it all with Chris Jericho. I've felt much of the same the last few years. But then as I evaluate the options and what Chris Jericho's priorities typically seem to be, I think there is honestly a year of solid, intriguing programming that can see him do a lot of different things. That being said, I don't think he's necessarily done with AEW or should be done with AEW, and I'll tell you why. Chris Jericho is one of the most important signings in AEW history. He was a huge building block for the company, a recognizable name to all wrestling fans at a point of which they started. We have seen Jericho do everything he can in AEW, at least what he seems to be willing to do, or creative seems to be willing to do with him. I thought there was a possibility for a tag title run, maybe a trios title run, something like that there, where he could play off of other people. But instead, they seemed keen on doing stables over and over and over again. And each one progressively got less interesting. You had the Inner Circle, which was, again, a big building block for AEW. The Jericho Appreciation Society, which a lot of people rolled their eyes at. And then the Learning Tree, which many people were just happy to see Big Bill and Brian Keith doing things, but it never quite hit. Had a couple of entertaining moments, but it never hit, and Jericho just went away. Now Jericho's off TV, his contract seemingly winding down. He's been a part of stables. Like I said, they got less important, less interesting. He's been a Ring of Honor world champion. He had a couple good matches with Bandito, but largely the in-ring hasn't been that great over the last year or so either. He's 54 years old, but I don't think he's done. Right now, AEW is going to be without Swerve, Ospreay. You don't know what's up with Kenny Omega. Adam Cole is gone for maybe forever. Switchblade Jay White sidelined. And Chris Jericho is sort of a horse without a stable, so to speak. And I think that should be his farewell storyline in AEW. He comes back, there's an elated Brian Keith and Big Bill, but Chris Jericho's just somber. He's not happy. He's a little bummed out. He realizes he doesn't have a place in AEW, and maybe that can be his farewell story in the last couple of months of his deal, which would see him probably put over Brian Keith and Big Bill. It certainly should. And Jericho could wrap up and go elsewhere. You know, Tokyo Dome's right after that as well. He's got a good relationship with New Japan. Maybe he can add a little bit of marquee value to that, have a match with a younger talent, something like that. But that's largely what his career should be at this point, is relying on younger talent to help him where he is a bit of an aging wrestler, but still has some name value. Naturally, around January, when his contract is rumored to be up, there are going to be Royal Rumble rumors. There's always going to be Royal Rumble rumors, and there should be. He should come back to WWE. He should be in the Royal Rumble. He should have a program leading into WrestleMania, and probably a WWE Hall of Fame headline induction. And I think that really sets the stage of what a Chris Jericho 2026 should look like. He wraps up with AEW in 2025. Maybe he does a big indie appearance or New Japan appearance to capitalize on the buzz in early January of his free agency. Not that it would matter with him being in AEW, going over to New Japan and doing anything there, but the relationship is still good. And that is an important element of this. Chris Jericho has maintained good relationships with almost every company, but also a sustained year, 2-year-long Chris Jericho run doesn't seem to be the move anymore. At some point, everybody's washed. Father Time passes up everybody, and Chris Jericho is hitting that stage where I think you need short spurts of his character, creative, and performances. And going from Royal Rumble to WrestleMania, I think, is ideal. especially if you've got a talent that is sort of left out in the cold. They need something creatively. They need something they can build off of. You got 2 nights of WrestleMania. You can do that, capitalize, put them in the Hall of Fame, but then capitalize on partnerships as well. Chris Jericho is big on accomplishing things, right? He likes to do things he's never done before. AAA is something that he hasn't done much of before, and the calendar really plays in his favor. After WrestleMania season, AAA is going to be doing the build to Triple Mania. He's never worked a Triple Mania. I think he had one AAA match, and it was like 30 years ago. I think that audience would really love him, too. Now, granted, I am not necessarily in tune with everything the AAA audience loves, but they certainly seem more lenient to an aging star like Jericho, who still has a little bit left in the tank, coming in. I think he would get the right kind of heat. You build to something at Triple Mania. WWE would, of course, be thrilled with that. Somebody that can help anchor that partnership, even in the interim. Somebody that they trust with things like that. And again, somebody with name value. And even Mexican wrestling fans know who Chris Jericho is. So you go from Chris Jericho having a farewell to whatever the in-between before WWE would be, Royal Rumble appearance, WrestleMania appearance, Hall of Fame induction. Short program, Triple Mania. After that, you evaluate how you like Chris Jericho at that stage, whether it be WWE or AAA, but that isn't the only big event he could do. He's never worked TNA. Completely untouched territory for Chris Jericho. New TNA, since their inception, has always been keen on doing, quite frankly, anything to get footage of people for their library. Go back to the early days. You'll see like Road Warriors pop up and Kurt Hennig pop up and Randy Savage a couple years in. Very commonplace for them. I certainly think that Chris Jericho working a TNA program after August and Triple Mania leading into Bound for Glory is something that we could see. He's never done that. If anything, he'll want it for like the book content. Man hasn't wrote a book in 8 years. Since his New Japan run started, none of that covered in any of his books. AEW not covered in any of his books. Those are probably ones of themselves at this stage. Because Jericho certainly is closer to the end than he is at the start. And I understand that a lot of people have exhaustion of Chris Jericho. They are finished with Chris Jericho as a performer. But I still think there is a little gas in the tank. And if given these short runs, there can be creatively satisfying, useful elements of Chris Jericho that also the world hasn't seen. Because what we've seen in AEW the last couple of years is reheating the leftovers. It was a good meal once upon a time, but you keep sticking it back in the microwave and doing the same thing over again, it's not going to be entertaining. The landscape has changed enough in WWE for Chris Jericho to have a fresh, short run there. You get the Rumble pop, you get the sentimental moment of the Hall of Fame, you get the WrestleMania program, you go to AAA, you do something that you haven't ever done before. There's the perception of helping them out, of course, and a similar thing with TNA, which will likely have a new TV deal by then, and surely they would like to capitalize on the Chris Jericho name. What does Chris Jericho draw in the year 2026? I don't know what that looks like. But I do think that there is a serious possibility that Chris Jericho can be a useful contributor to the pro wrestling industry on screen in 2026. Whether you like it or not, Chris Jericho is going to remain in the public eye. He's got a podcast that is very successful. He's going to continue to write books. He will be involved in the pro wrestling industry. It's hard to imagine that he's not going to be talking about it or participating in it in some degree. And I actually think that 2026 could be an interesting year for a person who hasn't had very many interesting years on camera of late. Hope you guys like this video. Let me know what you guys think. Listen, I know plenty of you just don't want to see Chris Jericho anymore. You're done with it. You're finished. You think you've seen it all. But seeing the trajectory of Chris Jericho's career, I think these are all, quite frankly, solid possibilities. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what videos you want to see me talk about or what videos you want to see me do. Got lots of great ones on here, talking about MJF's interview that we had with him, Bret Hart's interview. Lots of neat stuff. Check it out. Until next time, this has been Fightful Studios. We're out. Hey guys, Sean Ross Sapp here to tell you about mybookie.ag. Yes, you can bet on professional wrestling. I know a lot of people watching this know that they have some insight. They've got a little bit of a heads up. And if you think that you know more than the odds makers, head over to mybookie.ag. Use that code FIGHTFUL. Get a $50 bonus with a $100 deposit or a $100 bonus with a $200 deposit. They have lines on upcoming shows for WWE, AEW, as well as all other sports. But leave it a little bit of extra if you feel very confident in the direction of some of the booking, the direction of some of the storylines. You can bet on anything, anytime, anywhere with mybookie.ag. Use that code FIGHTFUL. Please only bet what you can, and please bet responsibly. Mybookie.ag, bringing you the best experience from the best. Mybookie.ag and the code FIGHTFUL.